I mean, I think we can just get started unless you have any objections, WDMV. You can just message me on Slack. But for everyone who's watching, the panel is meant to discuss diversity within music videos, commercials, and the industry at large. As a quick note, this Zoom seminar or webinar has a 100-person max capacity, but we'll also be live streaming to Facebook simultaneously on the event page. So make sure to join the WDMV Canada group and follow along if we reach max capacity here. There will be a Q&A portion at the end. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box as you think of them. We'll be watching out for those. And then also, if you could please specify who your question is for. So I'm Peter Huang. I'm a director here in Toronto. And to intro our panelists, we have Taj Critchlow, executive producer over at Pop Rock and talent manager. We have Calanthony Humphrey, also known as Cola. And he's an art director and manager for Claremont II and a musician, which is how I know him from touring with Sunreal. We've got RT, he's a director of many music videos and creator of TV series Utopia Falls, and Sarah Algamel, freelance director and producer, music videos and commercials as well. So the general objective of this panel is we're just going to listen to perspectives from established people of color in our community about the issue of diversity, and also discuss what the industry can do to change things moving forward. So just starting off right away, anecdotally, we see a lot of discrepancies between the music video and commercial world. I'm not sure that everyone has seen, but a grid got passed along like very recently where I think Lindsay Blair Geldner collected the rosters of all the CPAC companies and then showed the numbers of how many BIPOC people were on there, and it was very, very low. So we'd like to just kind of discuss, you know, as visible minorities, more about your own individual experiences. And Taj, as someone who EPs on both the music video and commercial worlds, maybe talk about your experiences and some of the differences that you see.
Sure. Hello, everybody. For those that can't see you, my spirit's there. Let's talk about it. Music videos and commercials in Toronto. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. On one side, being an EP in the music video side of things, as you know, because music videos is a more free art form, it's more, I guess, welcoming to all walks of life, all artists. I don't really see no issues in that side of things in terms of diversity from my end. But at the same time, I do a lot of business in the US. So I guess that is an issue in terms of, I guess, how much artists we have here on our own grounds in terms of Toronto is concerned. But as far as, you know, the opportunities that come in, because I, you know, primarily do all genres of music, hip hop, R&B, EDM, rock, whatever. So it's kind of one of those things where it's more colorful, it's more creative, it's more soulful, and you know, it doesn't really have as much restrictions in terms of what the advertising world is, from my experiences. But I guess it comes down to connectivity, relating to artists. Like Peter, as you know, you worked with, you know, Sunreal, and hip hop is hip hop, and you built a great relationship with him. And even though you guys are from two different sides, but the connectivity is artist to artist, and vision. And I think when it comes to music video, that's the connecting tissue is creative. Now in advertising, that's a whole different animal, because, you know, being an EP, you know, it's going to be 4 years for me, Pop Rock, as of November 15th of this year. I have my challenges mainly here because, you know, they tend to put me and my company in a box because we come from music video. So that's a challenge that I have. And a lot of, now, even though a lot of my directors do come from the music video side of things, but in America, where I have my sister company that we work with called Missing Pieces, where as you know, I manage Director X and Karina Evans They have taken the work they've done from music video and had been able to transfer those skills to getting like big campaigns, everything from Gap. Karina did this campaign called Tinder Swipe Night that won a shitload of awards at the Webbies, and the list goes on. Worked with Dolby. So funny enough that here we're talking about, racism, anti-blackness and stuff like that. But America, because it's such a vast, country with so many more opportunities for us to kind of land situations, it's a bigger field to play on versus here, where a lot of times, oh, you're from music video, what the fuck do you know about commercial production? Which is kind of nuts, because a lot of these companies outside of myself, from the, Revolver, Spy Films, a lot of these other production companies come from music video as well. But for whatever reason, because I guess they have had their track records of being in the market longer than we have, we tend to be kind of shunned out. But, outside of me having a company owned for 3 years, and then Creative Soul, which is my former production company, 5 years running a production company, but I've been in this business for over 20 years. And I produce music videos, commercials, film, and television. But so I think a lot of times commercial agencies tend to be a little bit hesitant, like, oh my gosh, you got these music video guys, like, am I gonna, take this risk with you for $100 grand, or do I go to the people who I know who continuously give business to you over and over and over again, and like avoid the risk and just play safe? And I think that's the issue. I think the issue is a lot of these agencies are playing very safe, and they talk about that, oh, we want new, fresh talent. But when the opportunities come, they tend to shy away from it. And that's an issue for me, because like we have seen traditionally in the past, where a lot of our talent has to go south to the US to attain, I guess, a cosign or validation before we get any work. And case in point, Karina Evans, right? Camille, Sarah, Karina, you worked with us on a couple projects, and I literally developed her for a good 3 years, and it took for Drake, to take that shot, give her that opportunity. Prior to God's Plan, like the biggest budget that she had on her reel was probably $15,000, $20,000. Okay, and after God's Plan, say no more. But with just the successes of what we've done in the music video, she went on to take those tools and those works to land big campaigns in America, where out here, no one came knocking on my door. So that's kind of my experiences of being an EP on both sides, where again, music videos, it's more of an open arm. It's more of an artist connection with artists connecting with artists, meaning directors and managers and creative teams come together making art. Where out here, it's in terms of advertising, it's more of a gated community that's very, very, very selective of who they let in.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because I've heard often too that in different places in LA and in Europe, music videos are taken a lot more seriously by the commercial agencies. They'll see directors doing music videos and give them campaigns that way. And so it sounds like a very specific issue to Toronto. Sarah, you've worked in both London and here. Do you notice a difference in the locations? Talk about your experiences.
Yeah, there's a bit of a difference. I think regardless, I just want to say off the top, like, I think it's when you first enter the industry, I think you look to try to, get yourself in there. You're like, oh, I've never seen an Egyptian woman do this. Let me try to do it myself, and that's sort of the mentality. And then I think over time you have to kind of acknowledge the fact that we do work and exist in an inherently racist institution. And in doing this, we're all in some way, anyways, we'll get into that. But I was going to say, so that is apparent, in both Toronto and London, of course. But I think what I've realized, and in speaking to my filmmaker friends in both Toronto and London, I think the difference is in London, they're a little bit more advanced in terms of the amount of, Black people you see on rosters, the amount of diversity you see on rosters. They have obviously such an incredible pool of creatives in the UK, just like we do here, but what ends up happening is I actually start to speak to these friends like, okay, you're on this incredible agency or production company. But what ends up happening there is that even though you might be signed to a great company, you still aren't getting the same opportunities. You still aren't getting the big budgets. You still are sort of classed into this sort of like urban culture type of, like tunnel. So that problem persists, I think, whether it's, Toronto, New York, London, whereas I think you do see a bit more diversity on the rosters there. In Toronto, we definitely obviously have a long way to go to even get these people represented. So that's sort of, I think, our own personal challenge.
Right. RT, as a director, talk about your own experiences in terms of, are you pigeonholed into a certain type of content? Do you find that you've had to, or had struggles getting into commercials, and talk about why you made the jump to narrative?
Well, do we got the time for this? I've been, look, I've been in this industry for, a long, long time as well. Coming up on 20 years now. Black don't crack, you know what I'm saying? But like the reality of it is like, when I started doing music videos here, absolutely, you get pigeonholed. I mean, everything that Sarah's talking about for a Black director is absolutely the truth in Canada. At the time, back in the day, hip hop, urban culture, and probably still to this day was not, sort of thought of as being as powerful a pop cultural force as it is. It is the lead pop cultural force in the world today. You know what I mean? And even back then, not only would me as a Black director, I would be pigeonholed to be like, you only do hip hop. You can only do hip hop. That's all you can do. You can't do rock videos. You can't do pop videos. But then also systematically, we talk about systemic racism in the culture and in the industry. Those in the music industry, hip hop music was, while it was the greatest pop cultural force, it was given the least amount of money in terms of its budgets that showed up in terms of the music video world. Radio stations were famously underfunded. So these were the problems in our culture. There was sort of a lack of understanding of how powerful this music is, what its worth in the world is. And so then absolutely that would filter down to the directors like myself, who would sort of be seen as just being good enough to just do that, but not good enough for anything else. And over the years, one of the things that I've tried to do as a creative is just almost as a reaction, is just to make sure that people do know that I can do diverse work. And I've definitely done my my support and my desire to be here and support the hip hop community here and do videos for them. But absolutely, as part of my career, I strove to make sure that I did rock videos, I did pop videos, I did these other lanes, I did country videos, I did all these other lanes to show that, my talent is not something that you can just put into a box. And that goes till today, you know what I mean? My transition into narrative filmmaking has always been a love for me. It just came a time when I felt like I wanted to make the jump and tell longer stories. So I made the move into television, and the same type of pigeonholing happened. The television shows that I would get would definitely be related to the field that I was in before, so youth culture, whatnot. But then sometimes I get the this is the episode where so and so gets shot. And like it's like, you have a perspective on that, Black man. So oftentimes those are the types of things that you get, when a show has to do with music. Oh, let's call the guy who does the music, the urban music guy, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So that type of pigeonholing and stereotyping happens throughout all the industries, whether it be music video, commercial, television, all of it happens. And, you know, we as creatives of color and culture, we have to fight those battles that, you know, sometimes our white contemporaries don't have to fight. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Can I say something quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so you know, I broke RT into the rock world. I gave him his first rock video, FYI, if you remember that.
Yeah, that and this is true. This is true. Taj did do that. You know, a black man breaking me into the rock world. You know, but you know, rock is black music, so I always remember that too.
Yeah.
History. But on top of that, little known fact is that I broke Taj into the executive realm. You know what I'm saying? I had a company back in the day called the NE, but before that I was with another company on a roster called 235 Films, and they were in need of somebody who was a talent in terms of attracting other talent. And Taj has always been a great advocate for everybody that he works with. And I actually brought him into the fold over there, which, you know, and actually at that time I left the company to start my own, but, and then Taj just excelled at what he's done. So yeah, each one help one, you know what I'm saying?
100%. I actually want to ask Taj about your roster in a little bit, but first, Cola. I think a lot of people talk about the diversity issue, and then often it kind of gets put upon brands and agencies. And so from your perspective on the agency side of things, maybe touch on sort of what the other panelists said, because a lot of it comes to do with, you know, who can win jobs, who gets awarded jobs, that kind of thing.
Well, from my experience, like there's virtually, like, you can count on one hand how many Black people sit in an agency, how many people of color sit in the agency, especially in senior positions. I don't think I've ever seen a Black person, or really any person of color, sit in senior management in any agency in the city. It's hard pressed to find. And I think one of the reasons for that is the fact that I don't think a lot of Black kids I don't think they know the opportunities that exist in the agency world, right? Like everybody that I went to school with, they all come from backgrounds where their mom is in marketing, their dad is an art director, like, and, you know, I'm a first generation Canadian, and, you know, I was pushed into, you know, trying, my parents tried to push me out of the arts. And because of that, like, generally the only people that you see successful from the neighborhood are like lawyers and doctors and, like, you know, the typical immigrant story. So I think a lot of times, like, the way how every person of color I know that's an art director, copywriter, the way how they found advertising agencies and whatnot, whether it's from the production side or whether it's from the creative side, or even, you know, the accounts management side, which, once again, like, there's not many of us there, is through things like hip hop, through music, right? And the thing is that, you know, when I first entered the agency world, I kind of got, you know, I tried to come in, like, you know, collared shirt and everything, but they still dub you as that hip hop kid. And you know, it kind of creates a glass ceiling really, really early. And, you know, you have a couple of people in the agency that, like, love you, and, you know, they try to push you forward. But the thing is that the powers that be, they're thinking about, you know, the comfort levels of their clients, which in a lot of cases, you know, whoever you sit in front of, like, you know, when you're pitching in the room, like, it matters who they're looking back at. So I think that's the reason why a lot of people can't climb, especially in this country. Most of the people from the agency side that I know that are Black, that are of color, they leave to the States because there's just way more opportunities. They actually have you know, a whole department dedicated to the Black community, dedicated to the Latino community, like dedicated to communities of color. And a lot of times too, you still see advertisements where you're like, I know there was not one person of color that was in the room. You know, I mean, not to call them out, but like, I mean, Dove campaigns, you see it all the time. I feel like every 3 to 5 years they get in trouble and they get backlash on Twitter and they get backlash publicly, you know? And it just is what it is, like, unfortunately. And, you know, I don't see a lot of I don't see a lot of, like, I'm speaking specifically from a Black perspective, but a lot of times going there, if you see somebody reach a considerable amount of success, a lot of times they might not have the time for you because they're trying to keep it together themselves. And in the agency world, it's you know, it's common to work 12 to 15-hour days. And a lot of times too, like, you know, sometimes they're not there to be the Black guy. They already feel, or the Black woman, they're not there to be that. So because of that, they feel a way as bringing, you know, a younger Black person or a younger person of color up, because if that person fails, it falls back on them. And that's something that white counterparts don't have to go through if they fail, like, you know, or if their understudy fails. So a lot of times if you see Black folk on commercial shoots or anything, a lot of times it's talent, right? A lot of times it's the actor. A lot of times it's the muse, right. Whatever.
It's in front of camera rather than.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, even from my perspective, I remember even while I was working at one of the agencies, you know, I got hired on to do a shoot for a brand that, you know, I wasn't necessarily competing with. So, and it was cool. And, you know, but once again, like, I didn't see any Black folk behind the cameras. I didn't see any of them, like, right. You know, in the coloring department. I didn't see any there. And sorry, go ahead.
Just to go back really quickly. So in the States, from what you know, they actually have sections dedicated to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But not in Canada, even though we're like known as a multicultural country, right?
Sorry, I giggled at that. It's
okay. I find that interesting because I've done like ethnic commercials, and there are agencies that basically do ethnic work. Ethnic, Balmoral, and their only mandate is to do ethnic work geared towards Chinese Canadians or South Asians, for example. And
right.
So I always found it strange that it wasn't necessarily just folded into, I guess, mainstream, technically.
Well, for Canada, I mean, there are Black people outside of Toronto, but outside of Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, and parts of Vancouver, like, and Nova Scotia. How could I forget Nova Scotia? Like, I don't think they're necessarily really focused on us. I mean, a lot of times they get ads that have been pushed in the States, and they just license it up here, right? So.
Yeah. Do you have something to add, Sarah?
Yeah, I was just going to say like that. I mean, it would almost seem bizarre to do something like that in Toronto. Like, I'm pretty sure 50%, if not more, of our population is BIPOC in Toronto. Do you know what I mean? So I think it would be a strange thing to be like, okay, let's have subdivisions targeting specific groups. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a multicultural population as it is. Like, we should really be creating ads that just target that diversity in general.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the issue that I find with that generally is, like, you know, same issue that I've been talking about. Like, even though we should be aiming to, like, you know, get everybody, right? Like, get the entire diverse community. It's just like the people behind the camera are still not diverse, right? They're, like, I find that a lot of times they'll hire you for a one-off, but, you know, they're not hiring you to have you in the room. And if they are to have you in the room, it's not necessarily to speak, it's kind of to meet a quota, right?
Well,
so
that actually leads me to my next question, which is, you know, a lot of times directors are built, like we talk about building directors all the time. And from a production company perspective, you know, they take young directors and grow them through networking. You can fund spec work, help link them to crews and collaborators. And so I've heard a lot of production companies want more diversity, but they say that they simply can't find them. And if they're being built, then is it not possible that they could have more representation on their roster by perhaps taking somebody who has raw talent but maybe less of a polished reel? I mean, Taj, you have more diversity on your company than most, and we're pretty much all working. So let's hear about your point of view on this.
Look, man, it comes down to this. On my talent management side, I manage Director X, I manage Karina Evans, and I also manage RT. So coming from a managerial background, I understand what it means to develop talent. And when I signed Karina, I literally signed her off of a music video she did for like next to nothing. You can see in the work, because at the end of the day, I don't care what color you are, you got to have great work. Period. Okay? The work has to stand strong, because it's fine. I'm fine with the development part, just as long as the talent is there, And I know a lot of times people look at me like, Taj, why are you signing all this new talent? Why put yourself through all this fucking stress? Just sign artists and sign directors from America, and the reel's already built in. Just make your life easy. I go, I hear you, bro. But the reason why X and I came together is for this purpose. We wanted to build a platform and cultivate talent from our city. Toronto is the best city on the fucking planet. We got the best artists. We are the epicenter of culture. And I pride myself where just recently, Kat Weber, one of my other directors, who was an editor, now director, and Karina made that list for like 30 best image makers on Complex, okay? I pride myself on the fact that RT put out a show on is FX, sorry? I'm losing my mind. Not FX. Hulu, sorry. On Hulu about this dystopian hip-hop sci-fi show that shows diversity in culture. So it's my job as an industry leader to continue developing that. And I have women, men, Black, white, Asian, Iranian, I don't give a shit. Just as long as the talent is there, I'll fight for you, because that's my job. I don't want the easy way in. But at the same time, I also want the respect where I've been doing this for 20 years. And if I'm telling you like Karina Evans got talent, trust me, because I got the track record for it. If I said RT's got talent, trust me, I got the track record. So when I'm coming into the game, and I understand this is a business, this is about your bottom line. So I understand there's a risk factor there. Nobody wants to lose their job. But at the same time, if you're not taking chances on new talent, those new experiences that you're not taking in, there's new stories you're not going to hear, because you keep going to the same pot of talent over and over and over again, and they don't look like me, okay? So my whole thing is you have to make sure that your roster represents diversity, the agencies have to represent diversity, the storytelling, the output of creativity coming out of these agencies got to represent diversity. Remember, growing up, when I was like, I am Canadian, there was nothing except white people on those commercials. The only thing that was Black was the hockey puck. So my whole thing is, it's like, I am Canadian now. I want to see everybody. I want to see how this call is. This is diversity, okay? This is all of us. This is all of us representing different aspects of our culture. And that's the beauty in it, man. Like, you're going to understand the power of visuals. Imagine right now, I got 2 young Black boys, okay, 10 and 7. You know how proud I felt walking into the movie theater, watching Black Panther? Like, futuristic. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not a murderer. You know what I mean? I'm not a pimp. I'm a superhero. I'm kick-ass. I'm futuristic. I'm super smart. My kids were born in the era of a Black president. You know what that means to them? You know what it means to the psyche? They're like, wow, I can relate to that person. I could be that person. It gives them hope. Our job as storytellers are to provide different stories, different voices, different experiences that people can relate to. And to me, it's not just only all about Black. I want to feel everything. Because when I grew up, I grew up in Hong Kong cinema. I could sit there and go toe-to-toe. I watched the Shaw Brothers, Golden Harvest. I knew about Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, Young Bae. I knew about Chow Yun-fat when he was doing soap operas. Forget about Crouching Tiger. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up on, Cable 4. The point of the message is these are the stories that not only we learn great stories, but we learn about each other, we learn about customs, we learn about culture. So for those rooms that feel uncomfortable having someone like me in the room, which has happened many times when I go into a room, holy shit, he's kind of, Taj, did someone eat you? You know, like they're not used to seeing a motherfucker like me, and that's cool. But that's a problem. You can't say we're this big melting pot and we represent diversity if your business places don't reflect diversity. That's some fraud shit. And I'm tired of people saying, oh, there's no talent out there, because you're not looking hard enough. I still got people saying, wait a minute, you do commercials? Yeah, have you gone to my fucking website? Have you looked at my work? Instead of like, they do Drake videos and they're black. They're great at doing music videos. Well, are you aware that I won a bronze lions for the Skittle Pawn Shop? I just did a full-length documentary with Bud Light and Anomaly. So it's all about having allies. And there are agencies out there that have given me a shot. So let me give a shout out to them. Those agencies, who they are, I want to call you out. You know who you are, and I thank you. They gave me a shot. And that's what we're talking about. I understand it's about also getting the best man or woman for the job, or non-binary. But the point is, it's about, if we're here to build our industry for young creatives, people of color, we gotta give them shots. They have jobs for $50,000, $100,000. They're always looking for new, fresh talent because their marquee directors are too high price point to bring them in. So give our people a shot, because guess what? What's gonna happen? That happens all the time, like in Hollywood. We're gonna be like, fuck you. All of us are gonna pack our bags and go to America and go elsewhere. And when it comes time now, because guess what? You want to work with Karina? She does $1 million campaigns. Cut the check. You had her. You got her. You had her at the family discount rate. RT now is doing shows with Hulu now. You got to cut the check. You know what I mean? So all I'm saying is diversity is out there. And I'm always looking. I'm always looking. Hit me up. Hit my email. I'm always looking for diverse directors. But you got to have the real. I welcome it, because at the end of the day, I want to represent what my society is and what my culture is. And that only way we could do that is by representing voices of all creeds and colors and genders.
Can I just jump in there real quick?
Yeah.
I'll just do real quick. Like, and I totally agree with what Taj is saying, obviously. You know, and in, you know, looking for diverse talent, one of the most important things is to diversify your view of where that talent is. You know, if you are you know, a white executive in one of these things and you want new talent, you cannot just go and look in the same places that you have been, because the reality of it is that talent is in many different places. And you will see, like Taj mentioned, if you go and you watch, music videos are a great place to start. They're an exceptional place to start, because you will see raw talent interpreting this music, and you'll see the instincts that somebody has, even if they're not operating with, you know, the budgets and stuff that they can. If you have a keen eye for that, you'll see the instincts of this person, and oftentimes that is where a lot of you know, people of color, professionals of color get to cut their teeth on independent music videos, and they get to do incredible stuff. But you have to widen your view of that shit, because if you don't, then you will never be exposed to this diversity that you claim that you want. So that's all. I just want to say that.
Can I say one more thing? Can I say one more thing? Sorry if I cut off anybody. And to add to RT's point, but here's a funnier thing. A lot of these agents, a lot of these production companies, and a lot of these people in agencies, a lot of these motherfuckers started from music videos. That's the joke. Our industry, all the cats who are now unionized, who are doing film productions now, television productions, all of them started once upon a time in music videos, just like in America, right? Propaganda films, David Fincher and all those guys. All those guys, Spike Jonze, Francis Lawrence, let's go down the list. The biggest brands in Hollywood came from music videos. Michael Bay, Antoine Fuqua, like let's go down the fucking list. So, but remember, the common stigma with music video directors is, oh, they can make shit look flashy. which is, okay, I get it, but there's also directors who know how to shoot narrative. Have you looked at their reels? Have you looked at God's plan and realized this is a story? There's 3 acts, beginning, middle, and end, right? If you look at Fincher's early work for Aerosmith, Jamie Had a Gun. That's a short fucking film. You can't tell me that's not a short film. Just because there's not a script, there's lyrics, but that's the script. So again, for those people in these positions, these gatekeepers, they need to get off their lazy chairs and dig in. And if not, that's fine, because I'm here for that. I'm here to support my talent, my city, my culture, and cultures, plural. Okay? I welcome it all.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say, I think a few things that I think were mentioned that I want to add on to. First of all, I think we all need to have the mentality that we're all sort of complicit in this. I think that even with this group chat, I think obviously, Peter, this is a really great move to begin this conversations that we need to have as a community. But even within this community, within this chat, we're missing the voices of Black women, the voices of Indigenous people, someone from the LGBTQ community. I think we always need to be aware of the voices that are silenced, even in our hopes or in our intentions, to be diverse. We still oftentimes, specifically, I would say, silence the voice of Black women. That's one thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to say is, I think in my own complicity is one thing, sort of on this idea of there's not enough of this roster available, which honestly is a true thing. When you're looking at, for example, cinematographers, it is really hard sometimes to find, maybe, Black female cinematographers that might be at this commercial level, for example. But that also obviously has a very long history, of course, in terms of the access and resources that they might not have, that maybe a lot of these white males do have. And that's something that we need to understand as a community. And it's like, okay, we understand that. So how do we move forward? And I think we do, like I think RT was mentioning, we need to be creative in where we look for that talent. We already have, the remix projects, NIA Center, POV. I think one thing that has been an issue in our city is not the fact that we're doing mentorships. We have a lot of mentoring programs. However, the problem is I myself have been a mentor at a lot of these places. And what ends up happening is I'll give them all my resources. I'll teach them everything I can. And then they come back to me and say, Sarah, but I can't get a job, And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be more relationships that are built between, the agencies and the production companies to these nonprofit organizations. And there needs to be almost like an accountability committee or something that's actually following these kids or following these youth, to be like, cool, they mentored, they got a PA program. How do they develop past that? Do we do shadowing with our top DPs? Do we do shadowing with our top directors and properly give them the chance to actually, get beyond that? And I think so many times a lot of these production companies or agencies are like, oh, well, I gave him a chance. He was on set 3 times, but that's not enough, clearly, because, they're not getting represented. And I think obviously a lot of that has to do with getting more EPs that are of color, getting more agents that are of color, in order to be able to, do their best to represent those, the up and coming youth in a more effective way.
Right. Paula, do you have anything to add to that from an agency perspective?
Well, yeah, everything that Sarah just said, like, I got mentored by some of the best in the city. And like, when it came down to it, I still couldn't find a job. Right. Like, and that happened for the longest time until I finally cracked in. But what happened was I got my shot, like, within an agency after being referred by somebody I worked with in an internship. But that happened like years after. Right. And the thing is that I think when it comes to people who are scouting talent, and the people who sit within those rooms, who are scouting talent, they know how to hunt what they know how to hunt, right? They know how to find what they know how to find. They don't know to look to the Remix Project. They don't know to look to, Urban Arts. They don't know to look to the NIA Center. And to be honest with you, I feel like the only reason that, like, they're probably searching now, that they're calling it out now, is, to get ahead of the curb, to get ahead of the curb of judgment, right? Because now it's actually affecting their bottom line. And now you're going to see a lot of brand managers, like, you know, who don't work for the agency side, but work for the brand side. Now they're not going to know how to operate in terms, because they're used to seeing people that they're comfortable with, right? Because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong with a campaign or a commercial or whatever, right, it's their job that's generally on the line, right? So it seems to me like the whole system needs to change. Like, and I wish I had better ideas, but the reality is that a lot of these brands, a lot of these agencies, a lot of these, you know, different production houses and stuff like that, they need to make themselves visible to, not only do they need to make themselves visible to, like, BIPOC people, but like they need to actually want to, and not just for the fact that they're being called out, you know, for having a heavily white, you know, roster. I mean, we worked on a commercial for someone I manage, and when it came to the actual production, you know, we had the talent, you know, and the manager, which was me, and we had like 15 white folks. Like, so the thing is like, and at all levels, right? From like senior management and brand manager all the way down to, you know, the art director and copywriter, right? So it's just like, yeah, you know, like they're gonna actually have to make the effort, and it can't be done out of fear, because right now it's out of fear. And the problem is that if it's out of fear, it's gonna be the flavor of the month until something new,
Right.
you know, gets called out.
Yeah, like there's always a danger of this becoming just another like trend or a fashion for now, and then people forget about it. Sarah, do you think, for example, like Me Too, did that create permanent change, or did people kind of forget about it from the perspective of hiring, from the perspective of getting more female voices into these companies?
I mean, I can't say for sure with the Me Too movement. Of course, I think maybe it made men second guess some of their actions, or I'm not too sure. But I mean, I can tell you there's a lot of trends that I've experienced, and as you know, I've worked in, you know, not just here, but in the UK and in different places. And the same thing kind of happens for, I think, women of color, and which is, you know, you get brought in because you bring something different and new perspective, and you want to represent women. And then, you know, especially if you're someone like me that has, you know, likes to has big ideas and wants to try to make change and wants to try to bring new ideas to the table, oftentimes it's like, it's okay until you actually try to make change and make them uncomfortable. Then you're sort of, you know, and then the next thing you know, you're kind of pushed back out because they don't want to deal with that. You know, they just want you to be in the room and sit quiet and do the job, but not actually have any, you know, transformative type of change in the system, or to actually try to, you know, make them look bad, make them look like you're, you know, more qualified. So it's a very slippery slope. I mean, to be honest, I dealt with it for 10 years until the point where I'm like, you know what, let me just run my own production company and do it, you know, my own way. And it's, I mean, unfortunate. I mean, of course, I've worked with brilliant people who've uplifted me. I'm not going to, you know, say that everyone has done that. But yeah, that tends to be a trend. And honestly, it's scary when you speak to other women. Like, it's like carbon copy the exact same story from, you know, like I could tell you at least like maybe 20 women who've had the exact same experiences as me. You know, it's like you're brought in, it's like, oh my God, you're the best. Great. Do you have any ideas? I don't know. Then it's like, oh, you know, then they'll try to pin something on you and make it seem like, you know, you've done something wrong, or whatever the case may be. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, you know, this doesn't really work with whatever, you know, our company, our team. And that's kind of the process for a lot of women in color in the industry. And I mean, maybe also Black men, but I'm just speaking particularly from my experiences. Yeah, which is really unfortunate. And it's so funny, right? Because like whether talking about ad agencies or music videos, a lot of times I bet if you look at the treatments, how many of them are probably based off of, you know, Black creatives or BIPOC creatives. So it's like, you know, the influence is definitely there, you know, but you don't want to extend those positions. You don't want to pay those big budgets. Yeah, which ultimately is really sad, because I think more than anything, we need to sort of change this idea and let these brands and agencies know that bringing on this diversity is only going to strengthen their company. You know, it's only going to tell more, you know, amazing stories and more colorful stories. And, you know, I think it's just unfortunate there's that level of uncomfort there amongst agencies.
Can I say something just to add on to that, Sarah?
Yeah.
And I think that because a lot of BIPOC people don't understand the hierarchy, or not necessarily taught the hierarchy of like agency life. A lot of times you'll see stuff like that go on where, you know, the idea comes from people of color and whatnot. And then when it comes to awards and whatnot, the person who gets awarded is like, you know, the creative director, right? And not necessarily the art director or the copywriter who've been grinding it out for hours and hours and hours on end, not seeing their families and whatnot. And so it becomes where, like, you know, their name becomes a footnote on an award that they generally put the best foot forward. So it's kind of like looking for respect, and it's up to the, you know, the person that sits on senior management to actually credit the team. And they might do it here or there, but they're the ones who get, you know, the extreme pay bump. And in order for you know, the creatives to get a bump, like they a lot of times have to switch agencies, right? So it happens, right?
For anyone who might be watching and wants to actually be part of the solution and increase diversity and give more voices to their ranks and their companies, for each of the panelists, like, what is, you know, one suggestion that they could do or start doing tomorrow, or some sort of proactive solution that they can start implementing, for whoever wants to go first?
I mean, like what I would say first and foremost is just, you know, in a lot of these places, you know, diversity, and I'll echo a little bit of what like Kola was saying, you know, a lot of these places, diversity is seen as something that you either have to be shamed into. I won't call it fear, I'll call it shame. Like you get called out and now you feel ashamed, so now you must try to do something. It starts in that kind of a place. Or if it doesn't start in that kind of a place, it is like sometimes seen as a PR move. Like you want to get ahead of the curve, so you want to look like you're good. So you start up a sort of diversity initiative, whatever that may be. And the problem with that stuff is that these things are often, you know, they're more as a quota type of a thing. You look at it, you go, well, we need to fill this amount of diversity in our place. And that's just coming at it from the completely wrong perspective, because immediately what you're doing with that is you're looking at your diversity as not valuable to your business bottom line. You're not recognizing the power that diversity can actually bring into your company. You're not recognizing the cultural capital. You're not recognizing the fact that this can absolutely increase the amount of money that your company can make by accessing this person's network, by accessing this person's audience, by accessing the things that you can't access. You know what I'm saying? Just by having this different perspective. That's how you have to change your mindset as, you know, whether it be agencies, production companies, whatever the fact may be. If you truly want to engage in this diversity discussion, you have to realize that bringing in different voices, gendered voices, racialized voices, you know, cultural voices, you have to look at that, analyze that, and understand that that will increase your bottom line. Because, you know, this is a business. People are talking about, you know, there's that old adage that the only color that matters is green. But here's the deal: you're shutting yourself out of you know, that chance, that opportunity to get that audience, if you don't recognize that bringing in diversity will actually increase that bottom line. I think that's where you have to start, because if you start from that place, then as you look for diversity, you know that it's valued, and you stop looking at it as like, well, we only have three diverse slots. I got a women's slot. I got, you know what I'm saying? I got a LGBTQ slot, and I got maybe a Black slot. If you stop looking at it like that, then you'll start to see that what these people bring to your company actually makes it better, and actually, you know, increases your opportunity as a business. That's the first place that I think you got to start.
I agree. And to add on to that, just look at the analogy of sports and music entertainment, right? Like once upon a time, you know, Blacks weren't allowed to play basketball or baseball, and look at how the whole culture of sports has changed with all the athletes that have now come to the sport to level it up. Even with music, right? Before it was like a certain thing and certain style, and now it's like, you know, Latin America is like having a big bump in music, you know, Black music, you know, music from all over the world, Afro pop, you know what I mean? Music from the Middle East, like it's becoming, you know, like
K-pop.
Right, K-pop, like it's an example of, to what you're speaking about, RT, where you're fusing all these different categories and cultures, and it's just broadening so much different voices, different sounds, different, you know, streams of revenue. And I feel like that's the way we continue. You got to continue going that same way. With executives, like if it wasn't for RT being in his position at a time when he had his own production company at 235 Films, I wouldn't have had that person to reach out to me, right? So, you know, and it's one of those kind of things where, you know, a father to myself, I want to make sure that when my kids grow up, and all of us do, I want to make sure that my kids feel like, man, this world, I'm in a world that I could find a place. Because right now, there's a lot of people, gender-wise, color-wise, that feel displaced. We don't feel like we are truly being represented. And the true way of tackling that is, you know, we just got to have a real conversation and just stop and just look around your office and be like, is this fair? You know what I mean? And how do we, if you want to reach out, it's all about your intentions too. If you genuinely want to make a change, then reach out. There's programs, there's no different like internship programs. Reach out to like universities, colleges, I don't know, even high schools. Start putting it out there, because like you said, like a lot of folks don't know about advertising. A lot of folks don't know about production. They don't. Like it took for X to, you know, X left when he was in his, 18, 19, left to New York City, started interning for Hype Williams. And then he threw like the lifeline, brought me over to New York City. Oh, wow. I was his assistant for 3 years at HSI Productions, which was the company of companies. And then when I came back, I started now implementing all the learning that I got to start building our industry. And I feel like if all of us who's listening to this conversation, all of us on this panel here, continue doing that, because I believe it's like a pyramid. Everyone has to put a brick. It's the only way it's going to build, right? Everyone has to put a brick into this thing. But we have to come together as a community. And the gatekeepers have to let us in. Because if not, like Tupac says, we're going to ask a couple times, and then we're going to rip that damn door off, you know? And I just feel like we're Canada, man. We got to do way better. You know, I'm blessed that we got a lot of business in America, but I want to, just like how the UK has done it, they built their industry. They have their issues too. Everyone has their fucking issues, but at least they have their industry. I want to make sure, like, you know, 5 years, you know, a couple of years from now, I want to watch shows on CBC, on Crave that speak to all of us, all our cultures. And I want to make sure everyone's voice is heard. You know, I want to see representation on all fronts. And that's the only way we're going to make this a better place, not only from an artistic perspective, but from a systemic perspective, institutional perspective, and just like human beings. Because like you learn about culture, just like watching Unorthodox the other day on Netflix, I learned a lot about Jewish culture, right? You watch, you know, Schindler's List, you know, you watch films like whatever, like there's so much films and culture out there that the more we learn, the more we understand, and the more we appreciate each other. And we understand that all of us are one way. Not all of us are thugs. Not all of us are terrorists. Not all of us are, you know what I mean? Like it's just broadens our horizons on so many levels.
Sorry, Peter, can you repeat the question?
Oh, I was just one suggestion for any agencies, production companies, or brands watching who want to be a solution or want to do something proactive. What's one suggestion that you would have?
One suggestion. Yeah, I think tied into what I said earlier about doing more work than just, you know, the whole mentorship idea. I think that's a big one. Yeah, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, I think that's a big one. I mean, I think I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. I'll be clear. I think that there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. I think community dialogue is so important right now, and that's something that I personally am going to try to invest more time into, is just bringing the community together and having more of these type of conversations, because I think there's a lot for us to figure out. I think this is a really, really deep issue, and I think, of course, dealing with, you know, systemic racism, it's deep and it's intense, and I think that we all need to really figure out, like I said, how we're complicit in that, and I think we all are, and I think that, you know, I think we all need to understand like what we can do better, and, you know, especially in Toronto, the whole crab in the bucket mentality, right? It's like, if you have something, bring someone else on with you. If you get signed to a roster, be like, hey, I know other Black women who would be great for this. You know, I think we all need to be more open to those kind of conversations, and to really push for change in like any position we're in, you know. I think we all have to understand that we're all responsible, you know, and like, yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing. I know that's kind of general right now, but I think there's a lot of work to do, to be honest. I mean, you can look at specific things like, you know, should there be incentives? Should there be, you know, a metric system that's put in place to you know, look at rosters now in compared to in 5 years from now? But I think kind of like what Taj was saying, it all comes back to intention, right? You don't want people just to have, you know, a more diverse roster just to have it for the sake of having it, and, you know, there's no real systemic change there. So yeah, I guess my answer is we all got work to do.
I'll hop in here. Yeah, I think honestly, for me, the first time I ever saw somebody graphic designing, I was in the community center amongst a bunch of hoodmans, and somebody was designing some album artwork. And that was the first time I ever saw graphic design outside of doing graffiti. And the only reason I got involved in advertising is because I used to tag billboards and trains and billboards on subway stations. And I was like, you know what, I might as well learn about the stuff that I'm kind of destroying, right? So personally, for me, like, I didn't know really about advertising until I reached college. So in my opinion, it has to start from high school. It has to start early. Like, and when I say it has to start early, I think it's the responsibility of those who are successful. So right now I'm going to say, like, it's the responsibility of the agencies to know that if you want a more diverse future, you have to invest in it, right? You have to invest in the hiccups that, you know, your creative team might make because of inexperience. You have to invest in grooming. And the problem is that they're not interested in grooming. They want a completed package. And like, a lot of the times, like, you know, a lot of my white friends who are very, very successful in the advertising industry, these are people that have been groomed in advertising since they were in high school, once again, you know. And that's what I think it takes. You know, it takes that, and it takes whoever reaches like the pinnacle of success, who represents your community, to kind of pick you up. Which is, once again, I'll say, it's kind of hard, because sometimes you reach an agency and you see another Black person there, and because of the stigma, they're not there to be Black. You know what I mean? Or they're not there to be a woman, or, you know, they're not there to be queer. Like, they're not there to do that because they're scared of what might happen. And the only reason that they're scared of what might happen is because they probably already feel like they're on they already feel like they're hanging on a string. So it really, really takes, you know, also the senior management of whoever's working at these agencies to really, really, you know, cognitively think about how they're treating, you know, like the diversity that they do have within the office. And I think a lot of times they generally don't have to. They don't have to think about the ramifications of their words. They don't have to think about, you know what I mean? Wow, there's a lot of white people in here. Like they don't have to think about that. Wow, there's a lot of men here. Like they don't have to think about that. And I think it's time that they start thinking about it.
It's the Mad Men mentality, right?
Exactly.
It's the Mad Men mentality, and it's crazy that we're in 2020 having this conversation, but it's unfortunate. It's just what it is, and you know, and it's crazy. Something you said, Kola, earlier that kind of triggered this thought. It's like, because I am, you know, the only Black executive at a production company in our city, which is kind of fucking nuts. It's like anytime I go into a meeting or a conference call or to a set, that pressure, like you talk about being Black, you're Black. One thing, I'm unapologetically Black. Look at my appearance, and I don't, you know, a lot of times my Black executive friends that work in advertising in the US, male and female, feel like, man, like, you know, I gotta change this and change up that. And I go, no. I go, that's the problem. You gotta be you. You gotta represent who you are. You should never mute yourself, one. Two, that pressure of feeling like the culture is on my back, I do feel that pressure, because at the end of the day, if I go into this industry and I do a job, you know, I'm not going to get judged the way like versus my white counterpart. Okay, I've had producers who are white come to set, coked out, drunk, all this shit, and they're, oh, that's a so and so. They're so wild. They're so crazy. And if I blink wrong, you know, like, you know, motherfuckers get a little nervous. So that pressure of coming to set, I understand that, like carrying the culture on your back, because my performance will dictate if they want to work with someone in this realm again. And I understand that. But I always say we are who we are for a reason. I've been blessed that I've worked with pretty much the majority of people on this panel. I worked with Sarah and, of course, RT. Never worked with Nicola, but eventually we're going to work together. Worked with Peter as well. And I always say, man, like, just as long as we show up and do what we got to do, they got to respect it. And the whole thing about, you know, this thing about culture and feeling whatever, I get it. But at the same time, I always tell people I am a Black executive, and I rep that, because there's a lot of times that voice is not heard, especially in this country. It's just not heard, and it's not seen. So if they're uncomfortable with how I look or the way I conduct myself, that's their fucking problem, right? It's about,
Yeah.
right. So my whole thing is, let's have a conversation. Because for me, like, going back to what you said, Sarah, I welcome everybody. Like, to me, you know, one thing I pride, like, my staff is small, okay? Because I'm not a big production company, right? I only have like a head of production and an assistant. But I always make sure I fight, you know, I worked with Sarah in this capacity as well. I always fight to make sure that my productions are diverse. You know what I mean? I've broken Black DOPs. I've worked with female producers. I worked with everyone at different facets. When we did Nice for What with Karina, what I loved about Karina, because also we got to put this on the directors too, because to Karina's defense and to her, and my applause to her, is when we did Nice for What, she made sure, she said, Taj, I want an all-female crew. Black, white, Indian, I don't care. I want all females. Because if we're going to tell the story about empowering women and capturing women, I want to make sure it's authentic as fuck. I'm like, cool. And if you watch what she delivered on that job, it was exactly that. Every woman that watched that, I had mothers hitting me up, teachers. Finally, I fought something where, you know, my daughter could, you know, feels proud we could dance to. They're not being, you know, like alienated or subjectified and blah, 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 blah. And that was important. And especially, again, we have to be allies for each other. So if you see, to Sarah's point, if I'm in and if I see another executive, yo, man, you should hire so-and-so. Or if you see like a DOP or an AD who's a female, I'm going to push for her as well, too. I'm always going to fight. Because in any fight, what's happening in our streets right fucking now, is with racism in America and police brutality in the world, it's not just Black people pushing out there or people of color. It's all of us. It's Black, white. It's all of us as one nation pushing together to fight this cause. Women always showing up. Women always fucking showing up. You know what I mean? My sisters always showing up. My women of color always showing up. My white allies always showing up. And that's how we got to do it in this industry too. If you're gonna pull up, if you're gonna pull up on the streets, pull up in the fucking boardrooms, pull up on set, pull up in the executive office, pull up in the fucking film studios. That's the only way we're gonna have true change where it comes institutionally and systemic. But we all have to come together as one, and we have to be allies to each other.
That's awesome.
I'm just gonna quickly just piggyback a little bit. That's a great speech, so I can't really follow it up with anything. But all I was gonna say is just, we're talking about what can these institutions do to change and how they reflect change, and that's great. I would say too, echo what Taj's literally his last line was, is that we have to help each other. Yes, of course, the people that are in certain positions, like some of the people on this panel, yes, we have to look out and support. And I firmly believe that we actually all try and do as well, but we have to do more. But as well, for the people who are listening to this, that are the people who are shut out of jobs, they can't get the jobs. They've developed the reel and they think they've got a chance at it, but they can't get in. What I would say to those people is look to your community, look to the other people like you, the diverse people like you, and meet them, converse with them, talk with them, support each other, build your own coalitions. Because when I first started out very much the same way, I could not get music video jobs. I was shooting stuff for friends and stuff. I could not I could not penetrate the labels, you know what I'm saying? But what we did is we just formed a little collective and we just started giving each other the work, or we would call each other in. And that's how that stuff begins. It begins by somebody gets a chance somewhere and then they call you over and you do it. And if you build those little coalitions, somebody's going to get signed at something. Somebody's going to get a job at something and you're going to know about it. And then you're also going to hear about that experience, or you're going to know that if, such and such agency is actually interested in other female directors, then maybe you're going to be able to go over there. So it also takes effort within the people, that you don't treat yourself like I'm just an individual. I'm out here all alone. You're not out here all alone. There's a collective of marginalized people who are struggling the same way that you are, and you have to connect with them. And you have to form your little coalitions and learn from their experiences, so that you can try to get into these positions too.
Yeah, I started actually on that note. I got my career started with Ray Mendoza and Maurizio Ruiz from film school, and we didn't know what we were doing at first, but now look at where we are. I know some of you might have to go because we're past the 1 hour mark. But if anyone is available to stay, we've got questions from the audience, and we can start going through them now. Karen asks, how do we give BIPOC more opportunities to develop their reel without working for free, directors, DOPs, etc., so we can get them the reels needed so agencies will approve them and hire them more?
I think there's enough, also working in the music industry right now, I think there is enough small budget stuff that can go out for artists that are developing, that, could be given to, younger directors, right? I mean, maybe Taj and RT and Sarah could speak more to this, right? But that's what I would imagine.
All I'll say is I do, trust me, I understand the struggles of you eating corned beef and macaroni and cheese for dinner. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be doing that for the rest of your life. I do understand that, and you're trying to pay a bill, but also create work that you need to create to fill out your reel. The struggle is real, but at the same time, there's absolute validity in doing your own projects and doing stuff for free. And that comes with what I just said. You form your little coalitions. Everybody needs a reel. You know what I mean? All your peoples, you know, art directors, you know, cinematographers, you all are in similar boats, and you all need reels. And sometimes, you know, it's the type of thing where, you know, you come with a project that you feel will help your reel, then you team up with those people. And look, we're in an age where, you know, the technology is being democratized, right? So like, you know, people can shoot really good looking stuff now for very, very, very cheap. And, you know, put together this, you know, think about what you need for your reel, put together those things, and then team up with, you know, people like you, and build those little projects, because those are going to be the ones that give you the most opportunity to. I mean, sometimes you might get a gig that's going to pay you, but it has very specific requirements that won't necessarily bolster your reel to a level. You know what I'm saying? So you just have to figure out, you got to figure out that balance, and then, you know, maybe take that job that maybe you did get paid for, but just didn't really give you the creative space, and then go out on the weekends, team up with your people, and shoot something that you know is going to be targeted to make your reel better.
Yeah, I'll add into that. Like you said, like, there's a fine line between art and commerce, okay? And you got to treat it like, you know, like, look at Basquiat, right? He would get paid. He had his commissioned work, which is his job that paid the bills. And then there's art that he was painting in his house, and just things that he was just creating. So you got to treat it the same way, where, going back to what you spoke about earlier, funny enough, about working with your friends. I know Karina did that. I know X did that. RT, I know you did that. You know, like when X broke into being a director, and I'm speaking about Director X, just so we're clear. He literally shot a poetry video with his friends. Like, he literally picked up his camera, shot a poetry video, and that was the spark for him. And he was going around showing it to, like, you know, artist managers and a whole bunch of people, until finally that one person connected with it. And you're like, all right, cool. Here's a couple grand. Go shoot me something. Oh shit, killed it. All right, well, here's 20 grand. One of my boy Marv Brown from Top Cat Entertainment, shot a music video for $20,000, slayed it. So X slowly started building his reel. This is the game. There's a reason why they call them starving artists in the first place. You truly gotta love this shit. And what I mean by that is, you gotta be willing to die for this shit. And what I mean by, I live, eat, breathe, shit, storytelling. Like, that's all I do. That's why you see behind me, like, I have a mirror of all these films and performances that inspired me to do what I gotta do. And you just gotta go out there. And yes, there's gonna be times where production companies say, hey man, we'll throw some money to invest into a spec spot. But I've also had directors that pulled up and be like, look, I just shot this shit for nothing, and it's fucking beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone has to do their part. But if this is something that you truly want to do, if you're an art director, if you're a director, if you're a cinematographer, pick up the camera, make some shit, create art, man. Go out there and make shit, and just keep building it. I'm a type of person, like, I get hit up all the time. Okay? People hit me up all the time, send me the reels, DOPs and stuff like that. And if the stuff that I love, I'll, like, keep them close. The stuff that I'm like, oh, it didn't connect with me, but I also would give my advice to be like, hey man, it's cool, man, but you need to try this, try that, play a little bit of this, try some different lighting. I give some advice, so at least they're not walking away with nothing. At least they're getting some type of professional advice, so they could go out there and try to figure out, okay, I didn't connect the dots. Why didn't it click? All right, I got to keep going out there and keep digging. And I think that's just part of the game. But starvation is part of the hustle, man. You know what I mean? Like RT told you, like, I started in this game as a marketing salesperson, and I went around to all production companies. Like, and I know them. I know Revolver. I know Edie Wise. I know all of them. I'm like, hey man, what's up? Give me a shot. I'd be a great EP. I could sell. I know talent. Hey, you crazy Negro. Stick to what you know. Go make your music videos or fuck off. I'm like, okay, cool. But that inspired me. That made me be like, no, what? Fuck this shit. I know what I'm worth, and I'm fucking badass. So I didn't stop at that. You know what I mean? Shout out to my man, you know, Ray and Mauricio from Mad Rock. I remember I hired Mauricio one time when I used to do events. He was he shot my parties. He's my videographer for my parties. So people who came into this game, they've all put the blood, sweat in. Some shot BTS, You know, I created shooting BTS for some of my commercials, shooting BTS for some of the music videos. She was a PA on Hotline Bling. You know what I mean? Shit, Peter shot second unit on Rihanna Work. Am I lying? You know what I mean?
That was awesome.
So to me, like, if I see you, because my whole thing is like this, everything has to be reciprocated. If you want people to pay attention, then you gotta fucking show up and you gotta be loud as fuck. And that means your work has to be loud. And for those people who are not being heard, then fucking scream and kick in the fucking door. Because the right person with the right ears and eyes is gonna pay attention. And unfortunately, there's a lot of tone deaf motherfuckers in our business. But you gotta know where to go shopping too, okay? You gotta know where to shop. That's a lot of things too. A lot of people are like, hey, let me go over here. Look at their roster, look at their work. Is that the place that you really wanna be? You know what I mean? So yes, I understand that we're pushing for initiative. Again, 50% of more diversity here and there and there, blah, 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 blah. But until you have a conversation with that owner of that company that understands, again, their true intentions of, hey man, instead of just checking a box, what are you trying to do with your company? Where are you going? Where's your future of this? Are you just gonna just keep doing roll up the rim commercials for the rest of your fucking life? Because if that's gonna be the place, sayonara. But if you're trying to get into shit where, hey, Dove, give me your money. I got this great director. She's queer. She's awesome. And she'll take that brand and give you something authentic. That's the brands I want to work with. And those are the places where you should be talking to. So it's a combination of things. Like I said, what we're giving you are not going to be the 1-2 buckle my shoe solution. But at the same time, you got to go where you're loved. You got to go to a place that speaks to your mantra, speaks to your ethos, speaks to your philosophy. And then hopefully you have someone in that building that understands what your culture and what your story lens value will mean to their company.
Can I add something really quick? I think that, yeah, a lot of these points are really great. And I definitely was one of those creatives that started working with my friends to get experience. But a few other things I will say is, I think it's really important for young filmmakers to really start to understand their narrative and their story, and to try to like remember that. Because a lot of times it's that throughout the time that will really be recognized. And I think that another thing, and like that could be like really anything. It could be even if you want to work for Nike, for example, you know, make sure that that is at the front of your work, that your work looks like Nike, so that one day when you approach them, it'll work for Nike. And you have to get, another thing I'll say is I'm someone who sort of, as my like exec producer side of my freelance life, have a lot of times found money. And I think a thing I would really tell people who are looking to get more paid work is a lot of times you have to be really creative, you know, just like Taj was saying, but and that just means really understanding the brand, understanding the company, doing your research, knowing how, like, what can you offer someone, not just what can they offer you, but what can you offer them. You know, maybe that's knowing that Nike's about to drop this new sneaker, start thinking of campaign ideas for that new sneaker. And I think that's something. And also I think a lot of times people are frustrated. They're like, you know, I don't have access to this Ari Alexa. I can't shoot a video. But I mean, I actually mentored this workshop called Visual Storytelling, where they used their iPhones and stock footage and basically came up with 1 to 5 minute films. And I think a lot of them were so brilliant in the end, just with the idea of sticking to your narrative, that a lot of times they could use this now as a pilot, or you know, they can use this on the reel even. Some of them are done really well. So I think don't be afraid to be creative in how you come up with these videos. And a lot of times they can be used to get more money in the future. And also I think have a bit of pride in yourself, because a lot of times you should get paid. I think that's another thing is like, I spent majority of my career not getting paid just because I was constantly like, oh, but I want to improve, but I want to do this, and I want to network. I think that's great. Be open to that. You know, don't have an ego in terms of who you're working with, but at the same time, know when to, you know, put your foot down and say, I work my ass off. This isn't fair, you know, or just leave, you know, get your experience and bounce. I think don't get stuck somewhere where you're being disrespected for too long.
That's a great point. Our next question is from Tim. He says, first off, I respect you all so much and thank you for having this conversation. As a white cis male working towards becoming a music video and commercial director, how can I enter these spaces as a part of the solution and not a reinforcement of the status quo? AKA spaces problematically defined by their tendency to hire only white cis male directors. Does it come down to including BIPOC in the crew? Am I able to address problems of systemic racism through themes in my work? What are some good ways I can represent marginalized voices as a white director?
I can start on that. All I would say is, first of all, Tim, sounds like you striving to be an ally, which is amazing. This is great. So thank you for that. And what I would say is, yeah, look, I mean, you've kind of outlined a couple of things there. I mean, first and foremost, if you're given an opportunity on a project, then yeah, you wanna look out for BIPOC crew, cast, and make that a major sticking point to your work with said production company or said agency. Make that right from the get-go something that you are advocating for, and then follow through and make sure that your producers also follow through with those kinds of things. Look for request writing talent. You know what I mean? If you feel you have the power and the agency to do those kinds of things, advocate for those kind of things, and specifically look for places that you see you don't see a lot of women, Black women, the LGBTQ community as well. Look to advocate for those things and try to enforce those kinds of things. For me, that's something that you can do, absolutely. And you can look to explore these themes in your work if possible, as well. But also recognize that you may want to team with somebody, bring somebody along who can help to expand your view of what what some of these themes are, so that you are reflecting your work is also a conversation between you and maybe a creative of color or gendered, so those are the kinds of things that I would advise on. Everybody else probably has other things.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it comes to who you surround yourself with, right? Like that's literally it. And if your surroundings are not diverse, then it's time to get uncomfortable, in my personal opinion. Like the first time that I've ever seen like a diverse, crew behind the camera was actually when I was shooting a music video for my band with Mad Ruck. Sarah was actually the producer on it. Like that was the first time, and that was like literally that was like 3 years ago, right? That's way too late. You know what I mean? And the thing is like, if your crew is not diverse, it's time to get out and start meeting people. Like that's what real, like being a real ally is, right? You know what I mean? It's not just having a Black friend. It's not having like one Asian friend, right? But it's having a community around you, right? We're here. So, and once again, it's Toronto. Like if you can't reach your arms out and touch, somebody that is not, the same background as you, like, then you're in the wrong spot. Like, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can perhaps sense, and I can't speak for Tim there, but perhaps sense maybe this uncomfort for someone who's perhaps an ally to, join a roster as a white male at this time and be like, okay, I'm taking up this space perhaps or whatever. And I think it's important, and this actually goes back to the question about what can agencies do and stuff. I think it's okay to be obviously like, a white male who's joining roster still, and that voice and that, that narrative is still important. But I think there just needs to be, like Kola said, this uncomfort. People need to be uncomfortable right now, and I think if you do join that roster and you care, you can say, you know what, thank you for adding me to this roster. However, or before you join the roster, I would love to join this roster. However, I feel that it is not diverse enough. Is that something that we're going to be working towards over the next few years? And if
have
so,
those conversations.
Yeah, if so, how can we have these conversations? I think we need to be allies, like out loud, and not just, through our films. Like, I mean, there are, no offense, but there's enough Black women who can tell their stories. There's enough, people from the LGBTQ community who can tell these stories. We don't need white men to tell those stories. But what we can do is just advocate for those people. And, and I think like people in these agencies need to be uncomfortable, but they also shouldn't be afraid. We're not trying to like replace them, we're just trying to level the playing field and make it more equal and make it more equitable. And I think that, that fear needs to go away. And I feel that in a lot of conversations right now, and it's, it's not like there's no more Tims allowed. It's just like, great, how can we all just help each other bring on more, Indigenous, Black, BIPOC, female people to the rosters. And I think that's a great way that, Tim could be an ally.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm getting ready to crew up for a project, and I find that if you just look a little deeper and just don't go with, oh, well, I know this costume designer and, like, she'll be great. Just search a little bit deeper and then see what else you can find, because often those perspectives are just going to end up helping your project even further. There were more questions, but I feel like we've addressed a lot of them in some way over the course of the answering of all of them. So I just want to thank all of the panelists. And if you have any closing words, feel free to just go ahead and shoot them out there.
I'll start. Yeah, it's just to echo the sentiment that, like I just said a moment ago, for agency life, in order to have a successful shot at being in an agency, you have to have a diverse portfolio. So, like, once again, if you want to be a real ally and you want to really care, like, you have to have a diverse outlook, right? Like, once again, your community, the people that you surround yourself around, that's what's really gonna make a change of things. So get out there, get uncomfortable. Discomfort creates growth, and that's my final thought.
I can go quick. I think, yeah, I agree, Kola. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's communicate. Let's listen to Black women. Let's listen to people from the LGBTQ community. Let's listen to Indigenous people. Let's actually hear their voices. Let's work together. And this is a marathon, not a sprint. Just like, Nipsey Hussle said, this is something that we all have to commit daily, whether it's a small thing, whether it's questioning things in our conversations at work. Why does this person deserve this opportunity over that person? Like, we need to have these conversations, and we need to really support each other to get there and make this a better industry for all of us. That's all.
I'm just gonna quickly think, because I gotta bounce off. I gotta jump off, and I know we're all anyways. But echo what Kola and Sarah really said. Get out there for the the people who want to be allies. Get out there and just meet people. You're looking at if you're watching this and we happen to be the only diverse people that right now, then holler at us. You know what I mean? Talk to Taj. You know what I'm saying? Get our contact information. Have conversations. Ask questions. That's the most important thing. And listen, and find out the things that are issues for us, and then go back and have your conversations with your executives or your people in your company that maybe aren't diverse, and speak to these things. That's the uncomfortability that we need, that will initiate the change that we need. So yeah, that's what I would have to say. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, this was super, super, super awesome. Sarah, Kola, first time meeting you by RT. I guess I'll text you later. Peter, again, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I feel like this is one conversation and many more to come in the next while. But to everything that everyone said, let's just keep the fight alive, keep the torch high, and let's make real change, man. I don't want to keep going over this shit, but I just think it's a thing where, you see what's happening in the world right now. It's a reflection of society on so many levels. And you see all the open letters going out in all industries, from Broadway to Hollywood to NASCAR. Someone put a noose in my man's, in his garage because he spoke out about Confederate flags. Like, racism is an issue, a global issue, and systemic racism has been a thing that's continuously plagued our industry. And I just feel like, as Canadians, who I pride myself, even though, again, I work a lot in America, I truly pride myself in being Canadian. We're a place where multiculturalism is truly, truly embraced. But I feel like in order for this to be to its full maximum power, we need to diversify our industry. We need to diversify our storytelling and listen to everyone and hear all stories and welcome everything. So yeah, I love you. Stay positive. Hopefully COVID ends soon, so eventually we could all sit down, have a beer, smoke a spliff, catch a vibe. Camel, I know you get married soon. Blessings to you. You're awesome. And for all the people that didn't have a chance to speak, I hear you, and I represent you. And for my sisters, I'm here to protect you. And love is love.
Amazing. I couldn't have ended it better than that. So I'll give the last words to Taj in that way. Thank you so much for coming on board, and everybody for listening. I hope this, is just one of many discussions towards a more positive change in the industry. So yeah, thank you very much. And then I'll see you guys once COVID is over, maybe at a patio on Wednesday, apparently, when stage 2 is opening up.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
All right, well.